Welcome to the Digital Manufacturer Podcast, your frontline source for all things digital transformation in manufacturing. I'm your host, Mark Flynn, and I'm here to guide you through the evolving landscape of manufacturing. In each episode, we'll uncover the stories of innovation that are defining the industry, offering insights and strategies that help to drive growth and efficiency. Join us as we speak to thought leaders and visionaries who share their journeys and the lessons they've learned along the way. So let's dive into today's episode and discover what the future holds for the digital manufacturer. Hiya, Will. Welcome to the Digital Manufacturer Podcast. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Mark. Nice to see you.
Well, thanks very much for coming on the show today, Will. Really excited to have you on board today. So you are a technology adoption specialist at Made Smarter UK, specializing in automation and robotics. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I've been doing this job for about 3 years now, kind of helping small and medium-sized manufacturers with the adoption of technology.
Brilliant. Well, talk us through your career history to date and what made you join Made Smarter, because I assume you've not been there for your whole career.
No, I haven't. So I started as a manufacturing engineer at Rolls-Royce when I graduated from Loughborough in 2008. But before that, I've kind of always loved design technology at school, and I just carried on doing that because I enjoyed it. It was only when I did an internship at Rolls-Royce in the foundry in Bristol in 2005 that I kind of understood the real-world implications of engineering and what it takes to be a manufacturing company. And I've just been kind of hooked on it since then. It's brilliant. So since then, kind of moving around different factories in Rolls-Royce, seeing how all the different components are made and how clever the designs are, how clever the people are that work out how to make it. It's constantly kind of impressing me and amazing me. And similarly, been at Made Smarter for 3 years now, visiting all the different smaller companies, smaller manufacturers, and seeing that they're doing similarly incredible things, and they're all operating in their little niche, doing their specialized things, and you don't know what you're walking into. It's incredible. I didn't realize that there were so many manufacturers around. There's something like 200,000 SME manufacturers in the UK, all doing their own thing. And it's amazing just to kind of see what you're going to walk into next. It's great.
Absolutely. We've had a similar experience. I mean, Rubik has been focused on the manufacturing sector for the last 3 years, bringing low-cost cloud technology to the SME market. And one of the things that really surprised us operating across the UK and Ireland was just how many great SME manufacturers are out there doing really innovative stuff. So talk to me a little bit about Made Smarter. So what does Made Smarter do, and what is your role within the organisation specifically?
So Made Smarter is a government-funded programme in the UK. It started as a pilot programme in the northwest of England in 2019, and it followed a government review that was looking at why UK companies don't adopt technology at the rate of other countries. So that report was kind of released in 2018, and that said to look at the leadership, the awareness of the technologies, the skills, innovation around digital technologies, and also focusing on the adoption within SME manufacturers. So if you look on the Made Smarter website, there's content around innovation and skills and things like that. But I work for the adoption side of things, which is just aimed at SME manufacturers. So my day-to-day job is going into a company, looking at their issues and recommending technology that's appropriate for them. Because a lot of the times, people running the companies have been doing their job for 10, 20, 30, 40 years and doing it a very similar way. And if you've been making curtains or beer or custom furniture, whatever it might be, for that long, you don't know where to start with robots or software or augmented reality, and you don't know what 3D printing is. So our job is to go in and say, these are the appropriate technologies for you, and we'll help you through step by step, understand what you need, help you talk to suppliers, because we're government funded, we're independent. So we're not tied to one or two suppliers. We'll kind of find the best one for you and work your way through that. And then ultimately we can provide a grant funding towards the project as well to help with that business case. But I guess the biggest thing that we found in the early days was it's more about the people. So we've got workforce development specialists within the team as well to help with that change management side of things. Because if, like I said, if companies have been doing the same thing for 30, 40 years, wheeling a robot in is going to be a big change for the people on the shop floor. So you need to make sure that you're bringing those people along and getting their experience and getting their input to what you're doing. and that enables it to be more successful.
Are there any other themes that you see that are kind of barriers to adoption? So we talked about, you talked there just about, firstly, manufacturers not knowing what's available to them. The second piece is that classic barrier to change. I've been doing it this way for 20 years. Why would I ever want to change? But are there any other barriers to adoptions or any other themes that you see?
Cost is an obvious one. I think the perception of something like bringing a robot in or 3D printing can be really expensive, but it can be equally as affordable, and the grant funding's there to help with it. There are other funding options to kind of make it more accessible. So I think there's a perception of, well, technology is really expensive, so it's not for me. That's probably one of them. The awareness is a big one. Kind of resistance change, as you mentioned, they're probably the biggest ones really as blockers.
The cost is an interesting one. I mean, certainly one of the reasons we got into the manufacturing sector was because we saw that the cost of technology was coming down quite significantly. I mean, we don't specialize in robotics, but in SaaS technology in particular, you can get yourself world-class technology for a low-cost subscription. So the capital outlay now that used to be required to put in the likes of an Oracle or a SAP, and I'm not promoting those systems in any way, but putting in an enterprise class system would be significant. But now you can get similar capabilities for a lower cost. And I understand you can do the same with robotics, like cobots and stuff have come down significantly in price. Is that right?
Yes, you can probably get a cobot for maybe £10,000, £15,000 now, quite a small one, but in some cases that's all you need. So it's a lot more accessible than people think it is. And there are a lot of the companies do offer finance packages, like you lease a car, you can lease a robot, or you can lease a packaging machine. There are different ways of funding these projects. It's not just a case of building up the capital scheme and going out and buying it. You can kind of lease things or rent them or kind of approach it in different ways.
Brilliant. So where are the SMEs that you're working with investing their time? Like what technologies seem to resonate with the customers that you're dealing with?
The biggest one is software. Probably 50% of the grants we support are all around software, and that might be order management, customer relationship management. It might be a full-scale enterprise resource planning system, computer-aided design packages, CAM packages, that kind of thing. A very common kind of to help with the office kind of productivity side of things. That's the biggest one. Then we come to automation and robotics, looking at specific tasks on the shop floor, which you can automate to free up people's time so they can do the skills tasks, the more value-add tasks. Then we get into things like Internet of Things, monitoring how efficient machines are or how much energy they're using. That's becoming a bit more prominent now. And then we get to 3D printing and kind of simulation type software after that.
That's brilliant. And is that a roadmap approach that you guys would support? I mean, is it all about getting your back office in shape, then taking a look at automating your production floor, then taking a look at optimizing it through MES and data analytics, and then moving into more of the advanced technologies?
In general, yes, that's how companies do tend to approach it. But every company is different, particularly when you're talking to SME manufacturers. They are so bespoke and unique that they'll have different challenges. So I think the advice would be look at your biggest challenges and look for technology that can make the biggest impact. And if that's putting a machine in that applies labels because it frees up 30% of someone's time that they can focus on more sales and bringing more work in, then go for that and then move into software later on. It's very much dependent on what the company's issues are at the time. But generally, we do see the leaders want to sort out the office tasks first, to free up their headspace and free up their time to kind of solve the other problems that come with running a company.
It's interesting. I mean, certainly in some of the markets that we work in, we have an issue because we see the opposite. We see millions being spent on the factory floor in machinery and puttons being spent in the back office. Multi-million-pound businesses being run from spreadsheets that are corrupted, overwritten, difficult to do. So sometimes I think the customer base that we work get it the wrong way around, but I definitely appreciate where you're coming from, a perspective of address the need that's in front of you where you get your biggest bang for your buck.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do recognise that. I think in this country, we have an approach of buying a machine and sticking with it and making the most of it for 15, 20, 25, 30 years and really doing that. And I think it's quite common particularly if you've got a capital-intensive process using big, complicated machines. Yes, they will spend millions on a similar machine to do the same job if one breaks after having run for a lifetime. So yeah, I do see where you're coming from. Some companies do that. They focus on replacing what they've already got with something very similar. And then that doesn't leave an awful lot for investment in things like software or new technology.
Absolutely. I think it's about taking a balanced approach and trying to make sure that you spread your capital wisely or you spread your investment wisely. So once a manufacturer knows what they're going to deploy, so they have a roadmap of technologies that are designed to address their business needs, what would be your guidance in terms of how they go about implementing those and kind of avoiding those classic pitfalls of digital transformation failure?
I think the two bits right at the start that are very important. The first one is to involve the people that are going to be using the software or the hardware, whatever it is. Because the people doing the job know the detail of what needs to be done, how they do it, what the problems are. If you're looking at machines, they know how the material moves or how the temperature affects it. They know that the machine's going to have to deal with that as well. So understanding, getting those people involved from the start rather than just kind of wheeling a robot in and saying, off you go, it does make a massive difference to engage the shop floor and make them understand why you're doing it. Because there'll be a lot of nervousness around, well, what's my job going to be once you've brought the software in that does it all for me? So it's kind of making them understand that they will be more efficient, they'll be more productive, they'll bring more work in, and it'll be easier, the better quality of life and that kind of stuff. So that's the first one, is kind of engaging the people. But also linked to that, it's understanding your requirements as well. So making sure you know how many parts you need to produce in a shift or in a week or in a month to kind of say to the suppliers, this is what we need. Because talking about high volume production in one industry is very different to another one. So high volume to you might be 10 parts a week. High volume to someone else might be 10 million. So if you say, I need a high volume machine, and you get one that's capable of 10 million, you're kind of over-speccing it. So understanding your requirements and involving your people are probably the two things that are critical right at the start.
I think the people one is critical, absolutely critical. I would extend on that a little bit further and say you almost need to find and appoint that digital champion within your business who's going to be responsible for the delivery of that change. Like sometimes in our experience, we see it being the owner founder or perhaps the MD or perhaps the financial director or financial controller, which is fine. But you often question whether or not they're going to get the time required to deliver such a change successfully. I mean, is that something that you see in your work too, that kind of need for a digital champion or a digital manufacturer, if you were, within the organization?
Yeah, and that's one of our recommendations that we say to every company is, we use the same terminology, to nominate a digital champion. And a lot of times it's not the MD, it's not the person running the project, it's someone who's on the shop floor, who's got the ear of the people working around them to kind of bring them on board. So if someone's kind of keen about technology, speak to them and say, look, this is what we're planning to do. So when their colleagues have concerns or questions, they don't have to knock on the MD's door and say, look, I want to talk about something. They can talk to one of their colleagues as a digital champion and say, well, how's it going to do this? I'm worried about that. And having that conversation, they can get fed through to the person running the project or to the supplier or whoever it needs to go to. But yeah, a digital champion is critical. And it comes back to the kind of people development side of things that we focus on. So we have training courses specifically for a digital champion to help with that change management and helping them through that process and kind of mentoring them through something that they've never had to do before.
And what about choosing your supplier? So understanding your requirements is one thing. Any advice for how I would go out and find a supplier to deliver against those requirements? I mean, are there lists I could be checking?
It is difficult because there are so many and so many different technologies, and it's hard to judge if they're going to be right for you, I suppose. But I think if you've got those requirements, even if it's just one sheet of A4 that says I need it to do this, this, and this, that's a good starting point, because then you can go out to companies and say, can you fulfill these requirements? Yes or no, tick them off. Then you've got an objective kind of comparison between the different companies. You can talk to them and ask for case studies or examples or show where they've implemented similar technologies. It's quite common to go and have a look at a similar kind of producer in a different area who isn't a direct competitor. they're often more than happy to kind of let you in and show you around and show you what works, what doesn't, and kind of share their experience. It's quite a good community in terms of sharing experience in the manufacturing industry. So I think it's a case of having a look around, and there's a load of support available to manufacturers, not just from Made Smarter, but there is a lot of support. So reach out to kind of your growth hubs or local enterprise partnerships. They'll know if there's kind of specific support out there to help you with finding a supplier.
I think that's key. There is actually a lot more support than you think out there if you go looking for it. I mean, certainly organizations like yours and local enterprise hubs will have loads of information available in terms of what is the right architecture, what is the right technology, even who are the right vendors to be looking at, because vendors would have a specific industry niche in a lot of manufacturing verticals. And I also think getting out there, having a look around, whether it's a manufacturer in the same industry or it's somebody slightly different, it'll spark that innovation. You'll see someone approaching a similar challenge, maybe slightly differently, that spark innovation internally and allow you to come up with that solution that's going to really deliver benefits for you. Have you any great case studies from any of the work that you've done to date around manufacturers getting massive benefits from digital transformation?
Yeah, we have a lot of case studies on our website, and they cover loads of different technologies and industries. One of my favourite kind of examples to use is a company called First Play Dietary Foods in Stockport. They make quite a niche product. They make pasta for people who can't process protein, which is, I didn't know that was an issue until getting to speak to them. So they made all these things by hand and they package it all by hand. And they came to us and said, look, we know we need to do something, but we don't know what it is. And that was a couple of years ago. Since then, they've invested in an automated weighing and packing machine to kind of package their products properly, and they're packaging it. I think it's something like 15 or 20 times the speed that they could do it by hand. But then that's freeing up the people that were doing that job to kind of deal with some of the samples they send out to potential customers and bring more work in, and they're running machines, they're upskilled. So that company kind of took us up on a load of the workforce development kind of support we have as well. So they've kind of embraced everything that we're offering in terms of not knowing where to start, helping them with the automation side of things, finding suppliers and validating that it's the right thing for them, to bringing their staff on board, understanding what their concerns were and going through that and developing their team leaders. And yes, I think that's quite a good one that I do use in a lot of my presentations, just because they came to us and said, we know we need to do something, but we don't know what. And we've kind of helped them in each stage of it.
Yeah. Getting that clarity around what you need to do in order to solve the problem, or even in fact, step back, what are the different options that are available to you to solve a problem is massive. You know, I think that in any digital transformation journey, that is a requirement at the start, but it's also a requirement throughout, because the digital landscape never stands still, does it? I mean, it changes so much year to year. What would be your advice for manufacturers to try and keep up with the changes in the digital landscape? Like, how should they approach making sure that they're aware of the latest technologies? Is that as simple as working with their local Made Smarter representatives?
Part of me thinks, do they need to keep up to speed with it? I think for me, it comes back to looking at the issues in the company and finding technology which helps those issues. So if you take robotics, there's been loads of advancements in terms of vision systems and things like that. But I think the advice would be to start off something more simple. And if it's welding, for example, you can buy welding cobots, collaborative robots that weld for you. They're basically off-the-shelf technology. So you can start with that and program it. So you learn how it works, you learn about the process. And then if you think you need a vision system, look to that next and take it step by step. So because I think there's a risk that you see the kind of flashiest, latest technology and you say, I want to go and do that. And you kind of miss out on some of the learning. And in a lot of the cases, the companies don't need that. That's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is the capacity or just having that headroom to kind of run the business. So yes, it's good to kind of keep an eye out on what's possible. And particularly with things like 3D printing, where there's so many kind of developments in different material types and material strength and process performance, I suppose keeping your eye on that would be important, because at the moment you might look at it and say, I've got requirements for material properties for my product. And at the moment, I can't do that with 3D printing. But if you keep an eye on technologies in a year or two, that is moving so fast that might be available to you. So it's keeping an eye on it, but there are different channels to do that. So yeah, you can always tap into Made2Match and say, look, is there anything out there yet? Every so often I'll come across a new technology or a new company that I think, oh, I worked with a brewery 2 years ago. Maybe they'd be interested in this new technology. I'll just spot it or send over to them. So yeah, we do keep that ongoing kind of discussion. So it's one of the channels to kind of keep in touch with those progressions in technology.
Such a great answer. Just to highlight the points that really caught me. The first was to take an iterative approach, start small and build upon your digital transformation journey, making sure that you are applying technologies and solutions to address immediate business problems and get immediate business benefit. And there's loads of reasons for doing that. One, it's easier to approach. And two, I often find in digital transformation programs, you've got to create momentum, right? You can't go on these mammoth configuration, implementation type projects. The business needs to see benefit and needs to see it immediately. And that's as much about winning hearts and minds within the organization as anything else. As soon as people start to see progress, they'll absolutely follow. So I completely concur with you in terms of taking it slow and taking that iterative approach. The other piece that I thought was really unique to call out was don't be like a magpie. Don't implement technology for technology's sake. It doesn't always have to be the next big thing. We hear a lot today around artificial intelligence and how can I apply artificial intelligence to my production process, when in fact all you need to do is structure the data within your production process first. Don't worry about artificial intelligence. Do the basics right first. Get your processes integrated end to end. Make sure your data is being captured correctly in a centralized place. Don't worry about those advanced technologies until you're at a level to take benefit from them. Absolutely great. Just on the AI piece, just because it's so topical, do you see any SMEs taking real advantage of that technology yet, or is it a step too far currently?
That's what I was thinking of when you were saying about people being aware of technology. Because more recently, we're having companies come into us say, I want to know how I can use AI. I've heard about ChatGPT or Google Gemini or whatever it is. So yes, we do see an interest in it. And it's great that that's a really accessible technology that we can kind of say, well, it's quite good for kind of creating marketing copy or helping with search engine optimization. It's good as an introduction to have a play around with, and it's kind of low risk. It's free to use and you get some good stuff out of it. And if it doesn't work, you haven't lost too much. We've seen it being used in things like chatbots and quoting. So taking in some of the logic that the people use when they're quoting for a job and training an AI model on that. We've seen one or two of those. So yes, it's starting to creep in. And also a lot of companies, that service providers like Microsoft, are starting to embed it into their offering as well. So that's quite a good way of kind of introducing the technology, because it's kind of proven and tested by someone else. You're not doing it on your own as a small company and wondering if it's going to work and if it's going to lose you a load of money. It's there as a tool like anything else is on your computer. So we're seeing more and more people ask about it, and we see a few people kind of embracing it and dipping the toe in.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it's moving so quick, it's hard to keep up. I mean, we've seen it a couple of times in production scheduling and production planning. And I don't know, right, but I haven't seen anything that kind of nails it on the head just quite as well as a human does. Someone that's been in the process, understands the intricacies, understands how the production floor works yet. So I think we're still a couple of years off that being a mainstream thing for sure. What about other kind of external factors that manufacturers have to deal with that technology might help? Why, like the big buzz in addition to AI at the minute is decarbonization and trying to be sustainable and achieve net zero. And there's loads of regulation either in place now or coming in place now, particularly in some of the European countries as well. How do you see manufacturers trying to address that decarbonization challenge using technology?
So it's something I always ask about when we're doing the workshop. So when we first start working with a company, we'll have a 2-hour workshop where we go and visit and talk around the issues, how they work. And I'll ask them about decarbonization or a journey to net zero. And the answer is more often than not, I know I should be doing something, but I've got so many other issues to deal with. But I think my suggestion is to treat things like automation or kind of decarbonization as a route to solving some of your problems. So if your issues are around supply chain or kind of supply chain resilience or energy costs or kind of employee retention, that kind of stuff, a net zero strategy can really help. Because if you're putting in technology to move more renewable power, then you're going to save money on your costs. If you look at a resilient supply chain by using a supplier that's down the road rather than the other side of the world, an accident on the M6 is going to delay you by a few hours, whereas a queue in one of the canals is going to set you back 6 months, as we've seen. So having a more resilient supply chain, using local suppliers really does help, and it helps to resolve some of those issues. And I think if you kind of publicly make a declaration to say, look, we've got this ambition, we're working towards it, your people, local community can really get behind it, and you might find that they've got an interest in the subject and they can help you out with it. So I think it has a lot more benefits than that people realize. So yeah, I kind of encourage people to not treat it as another problem I need to solve. Take a few small steps now and kind of chip away at it. It's better to do that than, like you say, when the regulation comes in the month before, going, oh no, now I need a full carbon footprint from all of my products that I'm selling to Europe. That's going to take quite a while. But if you start now, it makes that regulation compliance a lot easier, because you're taking smaller steps and you're starting to understand it and you're learning about it rather than trying to do it all in one go.
That's such an interesting point. Another interesting point, Will, so sustainability, look at it as an opportunity as opposed to a problem that you have to solve. And the opportunity being it drives a set of behaviors that will have a positive commercial impact or a positive supply chain resilience impact within your organization. And I do know for a fact as well that larger customers or manufacturers, big multinationals or big global brands are actually enforcing decarbonization standards on their supply chain. So as much as it's an opportunity, it's a commercial threat if you don't start to adhere to those controls and make sure that you have the technology in place to measure your scope 1, scope 2 and meet those obligations. Because those global brands, those public brands, they can't seem to be non-compliant, I'm sure. They are going to make sure that their supply chain is as green as it possibly can.
Yeah, and that's partly driven by the regulations, partly driven by their customer requirements. But you're right, that requirement does flow down from the largest suppliers, and often SMEs are kind of lower down in the supply chain, but those requirements trickle down. So if you're a supplier to a larger company, it's best to start thinking about it now and kind of learn about it, understand it a bit. Like you say, measure your scope 1 and scope 2. You could probably do it in an hour or two. That's a good starting point, just because it's pretty much based on energy bills and kind of fuel receipts. So it's relatively easy to work out, and that's a great starting point. But it's like paying off your mortgage. It's easier to do it bit by bit than doing it all in one go.
I like that, paying off a mortgage bit by bit. And so with so much going on in the manufacturing space, how critical do you think it is to have organizations like your own, Made Smarter, backed by government, to help manufacturers overcome these challenges? Not only is there the challenge of trying to keep up to speed with technology changes, but also the ever-changing external landscape of cost of material, cost of labor, supply chain problems caused by wars. How critical is it that organizations like yours exist?
I think it's crucial to the success of not just the companies themselves, but the country. The manufacturers that we deal with are kind of the bread and butter of what we do as a country, and they kind of drive a lot of the success. So helping them out with some of their issues, making them more efficient, making them more productive, making it just viable to run as a business through kind of support like ours is critical, because there are a lot of challenges around the availability of the workforce, skilled workforce. Trying to find skilled welders or people who can use a sewing machine from experience is very difficult, talking to a lot of the companies we work with. So looking at some of the technologies that can help with that, so that the skilled people you do have are more productive, it really does help. But having the headroom, if you're running the business, to look into that on your own, it's really hard. But if you've got support from, it's not just Made Smarter, there's places like the manufacturing catapults or research institutions or kind of local enterprise partnerships. There's a lot of support out there for companies, so it's crucial to go out and make the most of what's available for you.
I think that's absolutely right. And one of the things you mentioned just in terms of skilled labour, are we doing enough to educate the next generation of digital manufacturing? I mean, I've often thought we do loads of apprentices for skilled machinists, skilled technicians, but are we doing enough in the apprentice domain for digital manufacturers, people coming in that understand how to use this new and latest technology? Or maybe there's something in the works that I'm not aware of.
I think we could always do more. I think once you get people interested in manufacturing and wanting to do an apprenticeship, that's a great starting point. I think we need to be encouraging more people to take that route. I think people have they're interested in it, do have that fundamental ability to use newer technology. So kind of younger people coming out of school are more comfortable using phones and tablets and technology like that compared to kind of the older generation, I suppose. So having just that familiarity with how technology works is a real benefit. But yes, I think that's certainly something that needs to be addressed, is how do we get people that are comfortable with technology, that can embrace it into companies, embed that into how the company operates, and just educate the other people in there as well. It's not a case of bringing people in and making them, oh, they're the person that uses all the technology and everyone else does it the same way. You need to bring everyone else up to speed, but it's easier when you've got people that kind of understand it. So kind of bringing in interns or graduates is a good way of doing that, or sending people on apprentice schemes, because you don't have to be just leaving school to do an apprenticeship now. You can do it at any age. And I think giving people the opportunity in the workforce to take on an apprenticeship, even if they're 40, 50 or even 60, it's a great opportunity to kind of expand their horizons and bring new knowledge into the company.
Brilliant. And so for SME manufacturers who are listening to this today that aren't engaged or aren't aware of Made Smarter, how do we get in contact? How do we get started on this digital journey?
So the Made Smarter website's the best place to start. You can register with the Made Smarter adoption program. Currently operates in 6 regions in England. So if you register and you're in one of those regions, you get funneled to the appropriate service provider. It was announced in the budget in November that there'll be a nationwide rollout over the next couple of years. So if you're outside the region in England in 2025, it will be expanded, and then 2026 onwards it goes to Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales. So that support is there, and there's a commitment to having it there for the near future as well, which is great news. I think, yes, at the starting point, check out the website, check out the Made Smarter on LinkedIn. There's a load of good content on there. That's a good kind of education piece as well, I think.
That's brilliant. And Will, I believe you also have a book in the works as well on digital transformation. Tell us a little bit about that and where we might be able to find that in the future.
Yeah, so that's coming out in June this year, and it started off as a thought that a lot of the people we work with don't know where to find information. If you put 3D printing into Google, you'll come up with chocolate or concrete, because that's the latest news, that's the latest development. But as a manufacturer, you might look at that and think, well, there's no point. That's not appropriate for me. So the idea of the book is that it's a very quick introduction to each of the technologies so that they can make an informed decision on where to go next. So if 3D printing is appropriate for them, gives them an idea of what it can do, what it can't do, what it's used for, but then what to search for next that's appropriate for them. So it's kind of guiding them through that. Then it covers tools and techniques as well, and the people side. So things like decarbonization we've talked about. There's things like diversity inclusion, that's in there as well. Just loads of different things which might affect digital transformation. There's a quick introduction to each topic and where to go next.
Brilliant. And where can we get a copy once it's released?
So it's going to be released by CRC Press. It's available on their website. I've seen it on Amazon already as well. So yes, that's where I know it is at the moment. So I'll keep my eye out for any of the places.
And what's it called?
It's called Digital Transformation in Your Manufacturing Business, a Made Smarter Guide.
Absolutely brilliant. Well, that's very, very exciting. And just to finish off, Will, so in reflecting in our discussion today, what would you say is the single most important piece of advice or insight that you would like to leave our listeners with that are thinking about embarking on their digital journey?
For me, I think, well, we've touched on it a few times. I think the important part is looking at your issues and find your biggest issue that will have the biggest impact on your ambitions as a company. So if you're wanting to grow how can you impact your growth, or what's stopping you growing now? What's that problem? And look for a technology which will address that problem. So it's technology pull rather than technology push. And also the people side of things is incredibly important as well. So once you've identified that particular challenge, talk to the people that are doing the job, make sure it's embedded, and make sure that it's the right solution for you.
Brilliant. Will Kinghorn, well, you heard it here first, folks. Made Smarter. If you are in the UK and you're looking for advice and guidance on how to start your digital journey, progress your digital journey, fix your digital journey, go to the Made Smarter website and find out how you can avail of help and guidance. Will, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for tuning into The Digital Manufacturer. We hope that today's conversation has provided some food for thought or sparked new ideas that will help you on your digital journey. To learn more about any of these topics discussed in the episode, head over to our website www.rubiktech.co. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review us on your favourite podcast platform to help others join in the digital manufacturing movement. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a future episode. The Digital Manufacturer is brought to you by Rubik, where we're not just talking about the future, we're making it happen. On behalf of everyone at Rubik, thank you for listening.